Hello, this is Chris Mader, founder and CEO of MTA Consultancy. Really excited to bring the second edition of the Make the Adjustment podcast, where we bring leaders primarily in the staffing industry to you to bring interesting insights about how to grow your company, grow your culture, and grow your people and your team to successful outcomes. And today is a very, very special guest. This is a gentleman that, if I really date ourselves and go all the way back to the year of 1996,
Ooh.
a year in staffing where we did not yet have computers on our desks. We had folders, we had phone books, we had phones, we had each other. And so I'm dating myself. And today's guest, guys, is John Stuart, who's here. John is currently the founder and CEO of ZeekTek, a very fast growing company based in Northern California. And he'll tell you all about his amazing company that he's helped build from scratch about 8 or 10 years ago. And I work with John at Randstad. John was formerly the executive vice president at Randstad Technologies, where he started his career on a desk as a recruiter. So, John, I cannot wait to get your insights to our audience today from someone who came from literally a desk level job with a phone and a phone book to this amazing world of technology staffing in this company you're running today. So, John, thanks for being here.
You bet.
So John, talk to me about, the first question I like to ask people like yourself. I call it silver bullet advice, whatever you want to call it, is you and I have known each other almost 30 years. And, you know how much I deeply value personal and professional development. And I know you value this because I've seen you grow your career in this way. So why don't you share with me the most significant advice that you've ever received from a leader, a friend, a former boss, just something that really impacted you to adjust your leadership style and subsequent success you've had?
Yeah. Gosh, I could grab Chris at a few different things there, right? Um, and first of all, going back, yeah, I think we started chiseling on rocks when you and I started working together. So uh, for the younger audience, they got to think we're coming out of the dark ages. But, one thing that's very important to me is my Christian faith. And very early on, it probably was repeated several times. My father said, "Start the day with God and in the Word." And and I know we have a mixed audience, and some people have already hit the cancel. But I'll tell you, and I'd love to talk about that on another time. But whenever I stayed true to that, and I always haven't veered off track. When I start my day that way, all I can tell you is things just seem to go better. So that's on kind of the personal. Um, we worked with a gentleman named Greg Netland,
Legend.
and a legend, right? The godfather of staffing. And Greg was one of those individuals that when you speak to Greg, whether you were a C-suite or you were an entry-level recruiter, and I observed this just working with him, you were the center of his attention. And in my case, I realized that too. And then I started to think, well, at least he made me feel that way. But I think the key there, and he and I then spoke about it, was be present, be in the
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
As a leader, as an executive, you have so many things going on. And, when you're talking to someone, especially when you have this people first mentality, that moment you spend, Chris, with a recruiter that started with you 3 weeks ago when, you're getting ready for a board meeting and they catch you trying to get into the kitchen and quickly grab a glass of this because you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? You got to take a deep breath and be present with people.
That's great.
So,
Well, in a world,
yeah.
and John, it's funny. I want to talk about a couple of things about that because, when I did start to spend time with you, you were a few years ahead of me in leadership. I was a salesperson. You had grown your career. You were a branch manager, regional manager. You were doing something, and I got to travel with you to client sites. And if there's one thing I will say about you that I think anybody who's ever met you would say, you talk about mindfulness, the way you treat people. I mean, I put you on that, top best of class in just how you make other people feel. And maybe it's partly the mindfulness thing when you're in a conversation with somebody, you pause and you really take that moment. And then when you have to go, you have to go. Maybe it's partly your Christian faith. Maybe it's a combination of things, but is it those things? Where does that all come from? Because like the way you make people feel, I mean, was it Maya Angelou says, it's not what you say, it's how you say, it's how you make people feel, right? So like, I think you're really good at this, which is why I think you've had amazing work cultures in both the companies I've seen you work at. So like, just talk to me more about that.
Chris, I'm like dangerously curious. Um, I was the little kid that drove. I can remember my grandfather in the fishing boat up in New Hampshire. John, shut up! You're scaring the fish. Like I had questions. I wanted to know things. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer that, Chris. I'm genuinely interested in lots of things, and I like people, and I think when you're in our industry, I always say there's a couple types of sales, and most people judge all sales by transactional salespeople. Those are the people that you know you can't get out of the room quick enough when you see them coming because they're going to try to sell you Amway for those that are over 50. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about?
I do. Yeah.
But um, I don't know. I like people and I like people to feel good. And I think sort of my answer to your question on
I mean,
that.
we're in the people business. I mean, we talk about the relationship business, the people business. I mean, it's something you've been amazing at your whole career. Well, I mean, and I want to even segue that a little bit into, you talk about mindfulness and you talk about sometimes people value multitasking and doing all those amazing things. And I
Mm,
think even sometimes the younger generation, gets tied to technology. I kind of opened the show talking about, a tongue in cheek joke about how we did staffing before computers. But what's interesting about 30 years have gone by, you and I have seen this, right? You and I have seen, we got
look at
desktop
our hair.
computers. We're losing our hair. We eventually got desktop computers. We eventually got laptops. We eventually got cell phones. We eventually got
Yeah.
monster.com. We eventually got the internet. We eventually got AI. Like all these technology things keep coming to us. However, the only constant that hasn't changed, and you will, I think, agree with this, is that it's all about relationships. It's all about people. Like that part hasn't changed in our industry. Even though technology we thought would be a disruptor, MSPs, VMSs, all these things.
Job
So
boards. Yep.
job boards, right? So talk to me about, you grew up in recruiting and running recruiting companies, but
Hmm.
the adjustments you have to make between, let's say, the younger generation, for lack of a better way to put it, of recruiters like getting almost like overly addicted to technology as opposed to the focus on the relationship. Just talk to me about how you balance that, how you coach it, how you try to teach people that, just any insights you have.
Yeah, and kind of the big disruptor today is AI, right? Um, every industry is talking about how do you embrace AI to do better. And when you've been around a little while, I hope we gain some wisdom, right? Doesn't mean I'm more intelligent, and those that know me well will agree. But you gain wisdom if you're paying attention, and don't get distracted. Our DNA has not changed in the last 20 years. People need people, and what we've really, if I pivot to ZeekTek a little bit, um, most everyone working for the organization could age-wise be one of my children, and they've got a propensity for technology that I just don't have. So one, I release a lot of the reins to the leaders to steer us, but we're looking to use technology and tools to enhance what you and I are doing right now. How do we use technologies? And AI is a you know to me just a fancier way of saying computing has gotten better. Um, to me, spell check was my first introduction to AI. I'm like, holy cow, I can actually write something and spell
So
things.
true.
So
So true.
I think with constantly knowing that human beings, we all have the same blood, right? Surging through our veins, and just connecting with people. Use tools. There are firms out there I know are using to replace, looking to replace, I should say, people with computers. And I'm not saying there's no place for that. What we're trying to do is how do we get our people more connected to people through tools?
Yep. That's awesome. That's great advice. I mean, yeah, it's perfect.
We'll see
So
how it goes.
let's also talk about, and we talk about generations, like you and I have been asked to be like guest speakers at previous conferences on managing through multiple generations. And so it is interesting where, our generation, if you will, Generation X, has a certain set of core values or the way we grew up, et cetera. And then you have Gen Y and millennials and in this younger generation. What are some of the lessons
Mm,
that our generation, that, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, question one would be, what do we need to do? What are the values we want to instill that we want to make sure the younger generation has? And number two, what adjustments do we need to make as the, quote unquote, older generation to keep adapting and making the adjustment?
Yeah, well, first of all, our generation raised the younger generation. So if you have any gripes, look in the mirror. Um, really, I mean, I'm done listening to 50, 60-year-olds talk about the kids today. They're the
Yeah.
future,
Right.
like it or not.
Right.
Figure out how to play.
Yeah, sure.
Get relevant. I'm recovering from knee surgery because some young guys, thought they could slalom ski this summer better than me. And so I went through the course and blew my knee out in the second buoy. Anyway, little off point, but try to connect. Our generation was so focused on graduating from college, getting a good job that could pay our bills, buying a house, getting married, yada, yada, yada. I think that the crowd that we're working with today, certainly the young 20s, or those in their 20s, they want to matter. I stumbled into a great business with great people, thank God. But I don't know if that was necessarily my focus. My focus was I got a good education. How do I go make money and pursue the American dream? The challenge that the crowd before us has is it's going to be really hard to get material items or material wise the things we all got, right? Like we could buy a house in our 20s. That's becoming tougher. And I don't know if that's so important. I think it will be, but you got to be hardy. That would be my advice. I repeat that. I heard that years back from an older fella. And you got to remember, our parents' crowd thought we were knuckleheads.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
That's a really good point. Dickey. I'm sure you've heard that one before, but
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think we got to be relevant, but don't react to everything, which is kind of my nature. It took me a lot of conditioning to, whether it be with my own young kids or the people I work with, to hear them out. People like to be heard, and again, I go back to being present.
That's great. So let me ask you this, and ZeekTek, I want our audience to hear about the growth. I mean, you started at $0 in revenue as a startup. What was it? 2016? Was it 2016? Give or take.
Very end of the year, yeah.
So you started the business there. You're now, and you're private, so I'm not going to disclose. But tens of millions of dollars. You're growing the business, right? You're doing really well. Tell me about a time in the business, because the business is really steady, and you're in a really good spot right now. So we can reflect on this in the last 10 years. What is a struggle you guys had where you were like, oh boy, are we going to make it through this, or it's going to be really challenging? Give me a couple of, I guess, setback stories that became ultimately success stories.
I don't think, and I don't think we ever had a moment where we were like, oh my gosh, we've got 2 weeks of money left in the bank. I know we didn't have one of those moments. I think at the very beginning, what was real fun was one of our founding members, Chad Doherty, and we were sitting in the bullpen, and I'd been in senior leadership for 15 years up to the point where we launched Zeek. And we started, and Chad's calling away, and we're sitting there. There's like 3 or 4 of us in the bullpen. I'm like, hey, Chad, how do you make a cold call?
Well, and the audience should know the relevancy of the story, because you grew your career from a desk where you're very comfortable on the floor making calls to you're running a $600+ million zone for an international staffing firm, right? So you had VPs, directors, managing directors, team lead. I mean, you had multiple layers of leadership before I got to your desk. So like you hadn't been on the floor. I mean, doing the job on the floor.
I just hadn't.
Right.
I had to do their job in a long time.
Right. Yeah.
But we always stayed close to the client, kind of the team I was part of when we were at the old company. I'm going to answer the question a little different, Chris. It was, when did I feel like, it's not that we made it, but we're on the right track. And that would be in year 1 when we hit $1 million. And it was just a mental thing. I'm from a generation where $1 million is a lot of money, being a millionaire.
Yeah.
today that I probably shouldn't have been so excited, right? But that was one of those milestones there. And when we made it to year one, the very end of the year, and we were sharing an office space with a very established commercial construction company. We had our own area. We both shared a common area. And the founder, who was probably about 15 years older than me, he saw us celebrating our 1 year anniversary. And Mark came in, and we all became pretty close just out of proximity. And he said, "Hey, you made it to year one. 90% chance you'll make it to year five." And and the team grew a little. We kind of looked at each other. We're like, so we got that going for us,
Yeah. 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 You made it to near
So
year 9 or 10 now, right? Yeah.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
coming up on 9, yeah, in
Yeah.
October. So you know, I always say I'm blessed with the gift of worry, and that's not a gift. Um, I've had a lot of moments where I was thinking to myself, the sky is falling. The tech market in the last couple of years, for those in the business, has been more challenging, right? It was on a boom from 2010 till about 2022. I had moments where if I wasn't as seasoned, I think I would have said, wow, I don't know, maybe we're in the wrong business. But and that's why it's good, especially for the younger folks listening, be around people from different generations because we've had experience going through something. So we have a team, most of them made it through. And a lot of the dialogue they got from me or the coaching was, "It ain't as bad as 08, 09. You guys have never seen anything like the dot bomb." And, so I think that when I had those seasons of worry, I also knew, well, we always got through it before.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the staffing industry, professional staffing, you and I have seen, Y2K, we had the 2002, 9/11 happened, that recession,
mm,
and then 08, 09, that recession, then we had the COVID recession. And every leader that you and I were part of a senior leadership team for almost 20 years. And the advice we used to say to each other, just stick with it. Don't quit. Just stick in it. Like it's going to turn. And, yes, you have margin
yeah,
pressure. Yes, the volume isn't what it once was, a few months ago, but if you stick through it, it will turn for the better, right? Just keep the lights on. Yeah. So there is something to
yeah.
be
I
saying
mean,
for that.
we worked with another gentleman, Bruce Wiedeberg, who I think coined the word stick to itiveness.
Yeah.
We're all like, is that a real
Is
word?
that,
But that was just it in a nutshell, right? Like, stay hardy, stick with it. Now, if you just don't like what you're doing, then you got to find something you're
yeah.
interested in.
Well,
But work can
yeah.
be rough.
Well, and you had, you were kind enough to bring me in a year or so ago. I did some recruiting and sales training with your team, which was
Yeah,
so much fun.
we need to do
And
more.
I would love to do that. But I want to talk to you about culture,
Mm,
because if I think about workplace culture, I mean, there is no better guy to talk to than John Stuart on the phone today, because when I worked with you at Ronstadt, you have it at ZeekTek. What are the ingredients? You're making the soup, or what, John? You're making the ice cream sundae. We got to talk about ice cream. John loves ice cream, people. If you don't know John Stewart, you got to have an ice cream with him
I
at
was
some point.
wondering when the ice cream was coming in.
But if you're making an ice cream sundae, like what would you say if I put you on
Yeah.
the spot? Like, what are the ingredients to a great culture? Because John, I mean, I'm telling you, there's 20,000 staffing firms, and I think maybe 10 or 20% maximum have it. You guys have it. So, like, what are those ingredients to a great workplace culture?
Um, yeah, I mean, we don't get this right all the time. We try to start with people that can demonstrate before they join us that they've overcome some sort of challenge. And it doesn't need to be, something that puts tears in your eyes, right? It's, can you grind through something? Because I can't think of a business that's always rosy, right? Everything's got its challenges. Um, but I think part of that recipe is ice cream. We eat a lot together. We have the first 5 years we had the team was a lot smaller. In the room I'm sitting in, it's a big conference room. We would all eat together once a week, no matter what. We now, if you come work for ZeekTek, it's pretty sure you can get 2 meals a day with Zeke. So our
That's great.
kitchen is like your kitchen at home. So,
That's great.
but really for me, I think part of that's my social nature. And Dan Foley used to always, another gentleman I know you're meeting with, who we reported up to for years. It's like, John, you never eat alone. You
Yeah.
just grab a sandwich. And so I think that was one of my ways of just connecting with people. Food's a great way to do that. But the key ingredients is we're in it together. Um, I sit on the floor, albeit in the corner, with the team. And I think that's a great way to do our type of business together is do it with people. And the last thing I would say on that, Chris, is, you hear this said today, but you got to meet people where they're at. Everyone you work with is going through life and
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yep.
And, I was once told this is not who we are. This is what we do for a living. And you got to remind yourself of that at times. Like people are going through stuff. We've got, if I could pull a few people in to do a testimonial, I wouldn't embarrass them like that. But a couple of them would probably say, yeah, I could go do something else. But this is what I went through when I worked at Zeek, and this is how they responded. At least I believe that's what would happen.
Well, you say meet people where they're at. I mean, it's awesome because I remember when we worked together, if I flew into your market or something, we wouldn't go straight into a one-on-one or a conference room. We would literally go to lunch or get an ice cream and
Or go snowmobile.
And mountain biking. I mean, I remember all the things we would do together. I'm like, and part of me, when I was younger, I'm like, this guy's nuts. Like he's crazy. But this is now the secret sauce is like, I would open up to you. I would open up to you about the good things in my life, the bad things in my life at work, et cetera. We would talk about, one of the things, John, as a leadership coach is I deal with work. I call it productive workplace conflict. Like, how do you have productive workplace conflict? Sales and recruiting or subordinate to their boss or something. And it's like, it starts with trust. It starts with the relationship. It starts with the leader meeting you where you're at. Like that's where, and like, that's the secret sauce that I don't think most leaders truly understand. I just don't think they do.
Well, and another thing, Chris, and if you're a parent, you know this, or if you've coached, I'm just going to say kids, right?
Sure.
You can't discipline someone if that's the right action.
Right.
If you don't have a relationship.
Right.
And I think when you're leading people, we used to call it the seagull. And I'll let you fill in the blanks. I'll try to keep the bad words out of this. But when we had multiple offices, I remember one time someone said to me, you just did the seagull to everyone. I'm like, oh, good. They're like, no, that's not good. You flew in and you did what seagulls do all over everyone, then you flew away. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I didn't really know anyone in that office. So I needed to come in and get to know them a little bit. And so I think if you're a genuine leader, and I know it's different if you're running $1 billion organization or a $10 million organization, but you do have your direct reports and the people you're with. I don't know. It just seems to work better for me. Have a relationship with people. Reveal a little bit of yourself, right? Be vulnerable.
That's great. Well, I go back to meet people where they're at. I want to talk to you about quotes. We're here today. A big sign over my head. My college baseball coach, Boyd Coffey, had this famous tagline: "Son, make the adjustment."
Yeah.
And since I start my company doing sales coaching, leadership coaching, fully understanding that the people I work with, it's about behavior change and skills change, and them making the adjustments. Obviously, that's one of my now taglines and quotes. But tell me some of the whether they're serious or funny. I'm curious, like things you're known for, quotes, mantras, taglines, anything. I'm just curious what you got.
All right, I'm going to give you the quote. You tell me who said it.
Okay, let's see if I can figure it out.
It.
Okay.
And I won't do too many of these because good job doing your job.
I mean, that's Bob Dickey. And you know what? I want to tell you the relevancy of good job doing your job because you just came up with a quote and we did not rehearse this. So Bob was my old boss. John and Bob were peers for years. They grew up in the company together. So I'm a salesperson in the pit, and our expectation. And Johnny, you talk about KPIs, right? We're going to date ourselves. It was minimum 250 phone calls, 10 client visits, 5 job orders, 3 sendouts, and a placement. Right? Those were my KPIs.
That was your week.
So one week I had 4 deals on the board on a Friday. 4. So I'm peacocking around the bullpen and I'm feeling good about myself. And by the way, this is cocky Chris at age 24, not giving the recruiters any credit. Like I'm patting myself on the back. I'm doing all the wrong things basically. So don't do any of those things. People are listening. So my boss, Bob, says to me, "Hey, Chris, good job doing your job. That's why you pay your salary. Now sit back down and go make a couple more deals." And that's exactly the
You
relevancy of
didn't
that
have enough
story. And
job orders. Yeah.
good job doing your job. Exactly. So like, yeah, good job doing your job. And that carried, we all ended up saying that to, people at the right time when they needed it. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. That. And I guess one that I don't know if I almost everything I do or say, I've heard someone, you know, I've seen someone do, or I've heard them say it and I've been inspired by it. But, we always say around here, the deals are in the details.
Mm.
Whoever knows their client best, whoever knows their candidate, we're in the staffing business. So we deal with two audiences, right? The people we put to work and the clients that hire. Um, I think my natural way was really good for this because I was very inquisitive. So I asked a lot of questions, but I do that with our people. They'll be talking about, well, we got this offer and, I think whoever is going to accept. I'm like, okay, what does their spouse do? I don't know. I'm like, how do you not know? So for me, it's this never ending, desire to know more about
Yes.
my client or the candidate. So, but I
And that is,
do, yeah, go ahead.
no, that's the thing because you would I've seen you in the workplace. You can be deadly serious, right? I've seen you in board meetings and like when you get into like the details, you have a tone that changes. You go from like the fun, amiable John, where we're mountain biking, to you ask these questions. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know. And you said something earlier. It's a coaching point. So when one of your employees like, well, I think we're good. I once learned this. I think it might have been you or Bob. I can't remember. If your recruiter says I think, it means they don't know. So just when you said
Right.
that, it brought I think it was
And
you
I
that
used
you
to
may
do
even
that
taught me
all the
that.
time.
Right.
And the same person you're thinking about that was leading us, I learned to just say, this is why, not I think, even though I wasn't sure.
Right. Exactly. Well, there's something to be said for executive composure. So that's great.
Exactly.
Um, all right. Talk to me about tactical stuff. So, people listening could be presidents, CEOs like yourself, could be a
Yeah.
recruiter, salesperson, could be a branch manager. Any like tactical advice in staffing right now, like the blocking and tackling stuff that's critically important in your business without, sharing a trade secret of ZeekTek, but like, what are the things you're always mindful of, keeping an eye on? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Let me tell you what doesn't work.
Okay. Shoot.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, you can do that too. Whatever you want.
You know, and there's another, I guess, old adage. I'm full of them. The more that changes, the more remains the same. And I think we don't meet candidates in the office anymore in our business.
Mm,
Generally speaking, because you're recruiting candidates from all over the country out of one recruiting center. But relationships come first, and I always say the best are in person. This is a distant second, a video. A phone call is another distant third, and a cold email, further removed. I just think you have to do what's a little harder. And again, and I think it was Bruce again who we worked with years back, who's still in the business, by the way,
sure.
doing really well. Is if this is good, great is not twice as much. It's just a little bit more. No one can do twice as much, but if you're willing to do 5% more than everyone else, you'll probably get double the results. So a little example, real life example, all of our recruiters have some form of submittal goals. And let's just break it down to the day. So Chris, in our day, it would be you need 20 submittals a week. So times 5 days, you need 4 a day. It's Monday, you're going home, or you want to leave around 5, you only got 3. Stick around, try to get one more. Maybe you only have 2 and you're not going to get to 4, but stick around. I think what goes on in you when you stick around a little bit and do one more thing.
Yes.
It's a game of inches. So things like that. I
Great.
don't think there's a silver bullet. I think what we do is a lot of work. And those that are very laser focused, you talked about multitasking. Um, I don't think there's any such thing, at least any where you're doing quality work. I think that's part of your training and make the adjustment is especially us guys, sorry, you can do one thing at a time.
Yes.
So I try to help our leaders now help their teams focus on whatever task it is you're focused on, put on some blinders and just do that. And then know when you're going to stop and come up for the next thing. Barred the unforeseen, you get
Right.
interrupted and so forth.
That's excellent advice. That's
And
great
stay
advice.
closest to the deal.
And always stay close to the money, close to the deal. That's right.
Whatever business you're in, stay close to whatever it is if you're in sales to make a deal.
But John, I love what you just said about the just one more and like salespeople, recruiters, leaders. If you have certain metrics or KPIs that you know are proven in your business to work and you're short by one at the end of the day,
yeah,
why would you leave? Like if you, because this is a career, John, you talk about, the cost of housing, how things have changed, which is absolutely true. I studied this pretty deeply. Like only about 13% of people in the United States make $100,000 a year, on average, right? If you take 1,000, yeah, which has gone up 13%. But that said, in staffing, you can have a bachelor's degree. You don't need a PhD. You don't need a master's. It's nice if you have it. Don't get me wrong. Some people graduate high school and go to staffing. You can make 150, 200, 250. Like most companies don't cap commissions. I mean, it's a great industry, but to your point, you said this earlier, like you have to be able to overcome adversity, right? You have to have relentless persistence, not quit when it gets hard, because this job definitely gets hard. But the focus of like your KPIs, like I think, John, you're in my book, Make the Adjustment. And I highlighted the chapter I want to talk to you about, the state owner's mentality. What you're articulating is owner's mentality. If you own the company and you're one KPI short on Monday at 5:00, why wouldn't you stay an extra hour or so? Like, why wouldn't you? If you want to own your business, so I want to talk about owner's mentality a little bit. Like, you were kind enough to give me time today and for my book, but like I learned that from you, this owner's mentality. So can you define that for our audience? Because it's such a critically important piece of personal growth, professional.
Sure. Well, Chris, that came from our past when we were all, working with one organization together. And I wasn't an owner. The majority of my career, I spent my first 23, 24 years with one organization, several name changes, but one organization. And then the last almost 9 years with my own business. So you don't have to be an owner to have an owner's mentality. You have to think like an owner. And I remember talking to Bob Dickey a while back, and I was like, I fired myself on a Friday, but I hired myself back on Monday. Kind of, I guess, an owner's joke, right? But it really means you're taking ownership of your business. And so we were in a really, really great organization that empowered us, even as young managers, junior managers. I was told early on when I moved from Boston to Atlanta, see this sheet of paper? It was my budget in the P&L. That's your boss. And the gentleman telling me this at the time was Bruce. I'll give you an attaboy or tell you when you're not doing well. I'll be the voice of this piece of paper, but you work for this sheet of paper. You work for this budget. And maybe that helped very early on. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur in this company. I own my business. And it was that way for 20 something years. So the thing I would stress is when you're an owner, you can't quit. And when you have an owner's mentality, you can't quit.
Yeah.
So it's more than just kind of a tongue-in-cheek fun thing to say, especially those listening that most probably work for somebody, and that's fine. I would still probably be where we used to work if some of the people we've mentioned earlier didn't leave before me.
I know. No, I agree with that.
I'm grateful they left because we're doing this. But.
I know. But we had a great run. We were very lucky. If anybody knows the New Boston system, Sapphire Technologies, Ronsa Technologies from the late 90s into early 2000s and 2010s, the market was growing at 6 to 8%. We were growing 30%. Like we were just destroying the market, having a blast. There was a lot of love, a little bit of friction.
We thought we owned it, right?
We did. Well, but John, you taught me this. Like I remember as a branch manager, you said owner's mentality. You said, Chris, act like it's your money with your P&L. If you're going to hire somebody, act like it's your money. Act like you're sitting at your table on a Friday afternoon, scratching checks out of your personal checking account. And how do you feel about those people? And I remember
Hey,
when you
even
said that to
better,
me.
Chris, I'm
Yeah.
interrupting you, and I know you
Yeah.
asked me
Go.
not to do that.
No, go.
Would you write, so you're getting a paycheck. Would you pay yours, if you had to write your own, this was when we were at, Sapphire. And many, many times I would just be having one of those days where someone above me pointed that out, what you just said. Would you pay yourself today what you make if you had to pay yourself out of your own pocket?
This is a
Kind
good
of
one.
tongue in cheek, but
That's a good one. Yeah.
and many times I'm like, oh my gosh, I would be so mad if I had to pay me for today. I got nothing done. And I think those kind of things kept me honest.
That's great insight. That's awesome insight, man. And even you said, I don't even know if I've ever heard the phrase entrepreneur. I actually work with entrepreneurs all the time. I've never heard entrepreneur, which makes total sense to owner's mentality, which is, you work for a company and you have a
Yeah.
boss or you have a board, but you have to think like an entrepreneur. You have to think like an entrepreneur. Like, this is my money. What would I do?
Companies need entrepreneurs to build. That was a lot of us. Now, look how many people from our past have gone on to start other companies.
Oh, it's a laundry list. Yeah.
Right. So, what I like and what we try to foster at ZeekTek is you guys take the reins. You own it, but you gotta let people make decisions. That sometimes is hard when you start a business,
Yeah.
right? And Chris, we talked about that many times. But no, a lot of great organizations utilize that phrase because if you have entrepreneurs in your organization, you will lose them. They'll go start a competitive business if you don't give them something to make them feel like, wow, this is mine.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that happened in our old world, but from 1995 till about 2011,
Right.
12,
Yeah,
whatever that.
We had it. Yeah, we had that.
I'm like, I own this thing. Where could I couldn't imagine leaving.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree. And that's what every company aspires to do. So, all right. So listen, you've been generous with your time. A couple more questions. I don't want to keep you all day, but just talk to me about ZeekTek. Talk to me about the services you guys bring to bear, unique differentiators. Like, you started doing what and how has it changed to today?
Well, here again, Chris, we were just asked by a customer, a target. So I was out, and I love doing this. I'm out on a sales call with one of our young reps. And as time goes on, sometimes you get meatballs across the plate. And we started to talk about everything we do in cybersecurity, healthcare technologies, other disciplines, how we do a lot of project business, building teams for organizations, not just plug and play with bodies. And so I said to the potential client, hopefully will be a client, tell me about your organization, what you got going on. And the guy stopped and said, no, because then you're going to just speak back what I need to hear. And he goes, I want to know what you guys are good at. I go, well, first of all, I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with what you need. So I'm going to waste your time. But here it is. Come to our office at 6:30 on any given night. There'll be recruiters at their desk. I will bet the kingdom that we can out recruit anyone in our space.
Yeah.
That's what we're best at. You got to know what you're hanging your hat on.
Yes.
And, and I think some of that shows with the accolades, awards, things like that. You can get a lot of local community awards, and we've done that. Best place to work for, fastest growing, all those kind of things. But when you get in our industry a technical contractor to state that you are a great firm to work through, and then in a survey you come up on top, 4 of the 8 years you're in business. And I think you do that by people first. You got to pay people well, and you got to offer them great benefits. That's a given. But I think what we're really great at is we understand technology. We have a crazy desire to only work with end customers that we know.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just really good at recruiting tech talent.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because
my plug.
It's excellent, man. No, it's funny because I opened the show again. Your first job in the staffing industry was recruiting. Mine was business development and sales. And I think it's always interesting because I truly, I mean this, everybody that gets into staffing start in recruiting, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
what we salespeople sell is our ability to recruit talent. Like, so it's really sale. You know, we think about staff and how many companies that might be listening to this and leaders. You and I would talk about this. Like, there was a belief years ago that sales is more important than recruiting, and then it shifts to recruiting is more important than sales, and then it depends on supply and demand. Yeah, it does this, right? But at the end of the day, they're both important. We need both. But if you had to pick one, you have to lean to recruiting, because that's what you do. I mean, that's the service you're offering your clients as a staffing company, right? So you have to be, yeah.
It's a tough one because it's a two-sided coin, right?
Yeah, you need them both.
If you don't have great reps bringing in requirements, you know you have nothing to recruit on. But I would go back to, you know, in the mid '90s, late '90s, when Monster Board came along, that was going to do away with. So for all of those thinking, are we even going to have recruiters in the future because AI
Right.
is going to step in? I would say, well, first of all, I don't know, but history usually gives us our best lessons. What happened when the job boards came along? The clients got overly distracted by the wrong candidates. And we're seeing that now with a lot of the AI tools. They're identifying, and there's some really good tools out there to help identify talent, but you still need to take the human being, the human brain,
Intuition.
and
Yep.
interact with that person. So I think intuition.
Yep.
Intuition.
Intuition. Let's make up some words.
Yeah.
John, anything that you'd like to share with the audience that I've yet to ask, or anything else you thought we should talk about today before I
see smoke coming out of the ears? Have fun. You know, you talk about the culture. So what's today, Monday? So on Thursday, our whole local office, and we have people flying in from out of town. We're going up to Lake Tahoe to spend a couple days on the lake. Sorry, I usually
my favorite place. I've been to a John Stuart. I've been to a John Stuart conference, Lake Tahoe. As a matter of fact, I actually told my wife Melissa the other day. She asked me, "What are the 5 places in the world you've never been to, you want to go to?" I go, "I can tell you the first one I've been to, I want to go back to, and it's Lake Tahoe because of those trips."
I mean, it's just
love
that
place.
Up there on a lot of those ski trips, right? And,
yeah.
But I think don't trip over things kind of in the moment. Like, you gotta have a vision. We had a vision when we launched, let's build $100 million business, and then let's get a bunch of people to join us to help us with how to do it. And I think if you have a vision as a leader, you really have to communicate that very well. And then you're going to shape the culture and decide, what is this place like? But as you bring in people and they kind of get immersed in that, it takes a life of its own, Chris. And it's a lot of fun, but you got to have fun. What we do is a lot of work. Ron Ficillo, one of our founding members, and many of that will listen to this know Ron. He's like, you know, one of our mantras is, you know, work really hard. Of course, Ron threw that in there as a CFO, and have a ton of fun doing it. So we try to celebrate. We celebrate, like, you know, I don't know, there's so many cakes and stuff like that, you know, the ice cream. Celebrate victories. You know, what may seem little to you is huge to someone on your team.
Well, listen, John, you are you've been an inspiration to me my whole career in staffing from the day I met you. You know, for people that are clients of MTA Consultancy that have heard leadership training, coaching, John has been, you know, in my brain on when it comes to culture and strategy and how to treat people and how to develop talent. And there's so many things I learned from you throughout my career. So thank you for everything you've done for me. Thank you for your time today on the podcast. I'm sure I can't wait to get some of the feedback from people that listen to this. That'll be, I'm sure, delighted to see us together again. It's been 10 years since we worked together formally, right? And at the, you know,
yeah, some people know too many of the stories, which we've left out. But I was going to ask though, did you ever get any job orders from Pez?
No. I don't even know if I want to tell the story. Like, so, I mean, guys, you talk about having fun. So let's tell the story. If John's going to bring it up. So John gets promoted, goes to Atlanta. I'm in Woburn, Massachusetts. John grew up in New England, where I did. And so he calls me one day and says, because I was a sales rep, he goes, "Hey, Chris, you got to call this Pez candy company. I think they're hiring." So I look them up in the phone book, whatever. I'm calling the corporate headquarters. I'm trying to track somebody down, receptionist, IT director, anybody. It takes me like a month. And finally, I get somebody on the phone. I'm like, hey, Pez Candies, I've heard you guys have been hiring IT contractors. And, my name's Chris Mader at New Boston Systems, and I'm local to you guys. And they go, who told you that? I'm like, oh, a guy I work with, They're like, Chris, we have one person in our IT department. We've never hired a contractor here before.
They make such a well-known candy.
So I called John back. I go, John, like, where did you get the lead? He goes, Chris, I didn't have a lead. I was just happened to be eating some Pez candy that day, and I thought it'd be a good lead for you. I'm like, you are going to drive me nuts. Like
Stanley screwdrivers.
Hey, Stanley Tools. I moved to Connecticut. Call Stanley Tools. I'm like, oh, here comes another lead from Johnny Boy.
But you know what's funny, Chris? And I know we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
I liked skiing and snowboarding, so I was like, hey, Burton, up in Burlington, Vermont, I can do meetings up there on Fridays, and then, stay up there for the weekend. I do think, and that might have just been me, but if I had an interest, a lot of times it turned into Pez. It didn't go anywhere. But I think customers know when you're interested in what they do. And so we try to have our reps know something that maybe the typical person reaching out wouldn't, and to talk about it. But anyway, that's hopefully that's what you got something out of this, Chris.
The last, but I'll tell you, I could talk to you all night. So the last thing I want to close on is this thing. When we stopped working together and you went on to ZeekTek and I went on to other things, I remember you said something to me. You said, Chris, what did we do back at that conference in 2006? And I remembered, I was like, oh, we were Fort Lauderdale, is this, right? And then you're like, what did we talk about strategy-wise at that meeting? I'm like, I can't remember. And you're like, what about Maine in 2012? Like, remember? I'm like, oh my God, Maine, oh yeah. And I remembered everything we did, the conference. He goes, what did we talk about? The strategy, stick and rock. And I go, you go, what was the corporate strategy? I'm like, Johnny, I have no idea. And this is why I talk about culture. He's like, Chris, it's not always about the strategy and the blocking, the tackling, it's about the people. And it's about us getting together and building that level of relationship and trust so that we go back out in the field that we'll tackle these challenges together. Yeah. And I will tell you, John, I still have the picture on my desk of our leadership team in 2008. And I show people that picture all the time. Like, that team was unbreakable. That team, if somebody ever called me and talked shit about John Stuart, I was like your brother. I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, that guy, yeah, I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you have no idea what that guy's all about. And I think we just, the best leadership teams have each other's backs. And if there's an issue, we would talk. Like, you and I would just talk, just you and I, right? But I want to close on that because you did teach me that, like, that culture is all about the people and how you treat them and trust and all of those things,
And again, I think it was Bruce. And sorry, I quote the same. You work with people for 25 years. These things happen. This isn't who we are. It's what we do. I said it earlier. And you have fun with people. You do life with people. And business is just part of that. So, but thanks a lot, Chris. I appreciate you including me.
John Stuart, founder and CEO of ZeekTek, former executive vice president, one of the largest firms in the world. Amazing insights today, man. I cannot thank you enough for your time. I can't wait for people to hear it. And for those listening, again, this is the Make the Adjustment podcast with Chris Mader. And if something is going well in your life, keep doing it. And if something is not going well in your life or your business, it's up to you to make the adjustment. Thanks, everybody.
Well said.